Join UF Hall of Famer and 14-year NFL vet Shane Matthews every weekday as he brings you all you need to know about your Florida Gators, including news, analysis, and opinions with some of the biggest names in sports. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Or watch us live at 8 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter.
Good morning. It's a live edition of PodUp with Matthews in the morning from the International Diamond Center studios. We got a good show lined up today. We'll have our college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter, Brent Beaird. And then we'll have Mike Morgan from the SEC Network, talk a little SEC hoops and college basketball around the country. It's getting close to that March Madness time. Let's go ahead and jump right into it. Gator softball wins again, by the way, folks. They got a really good team. Let's go to the Titan Number Hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp, and we are joined by, as I said, our college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter, Brent Beaird. Good morning, Brent. How you doing?
Morning, Shane. It's good to be on with you as always. The pollen is taking its toll as it has on everybody, but with this rain coming today, we may get rid of a little bit of that, but we're in that kind of in-between period of Super Bowl is over, and we're waiting on spring practice. Not to say there's not things going on, but it's just that time of year.
Yeah, and speaking of the Southeastern Conference, the premier conference in all of sports, boy, they dish out a lot of money, Brent.
Yeah, they do, don't they? $808 million in revenue distribution for the 16 members. Now, the league distributed an average of $52 million to the legacy members. That's 14 of them. And then Oklahoma and Texas receiving 27.5. There's a transition period that we keep in mind here. Look, it's not that Oklahoma and Texas will be poor, meaning stretch the imagination, but that's kind of how they do with the money. When teams join, they will catch up at some point, and then you'll have equal distribution among all the members. So the league doing very well. Now the Big Ten has a little bit more than the SEC, but look, when you're able to give your schools $52 million, that's not bad, is it?
No, it's a pretty good payday for sure. I know we talked about it last week. But is Ryan Day, I would assume he's the highest paid coach in all of football now?
No, he is not. Ryan Day's new contract is $12.5. Kirby Smart is still the highest paid coach. Kirby makes like $13.3. So he is still the leader in compensation. Gosh, I remember when coaches started making $1 million or $2 million a year, and people were aghast to hear that. But yeah, the money is unbelievable. Shane, it's one of those jobs where you spend your whole life trying to get one, and then even if you're fired, you're set for the rest of your life.
Yeah, it's really a crazy business when you really think about it. Jalen Hurts made history by winning the Super Bowl.
Yeah, third quarterback ever to win the national championship in the Super Bowl as a starter. Joe Namath and Joe Montana, a couple of Joes there who are well known, were in that mix too. So I give Jalen a lot of credit, Shane. He was benched, obviously, again in the national championship game in Atlanta against Georgia. They put Tua in. He led them to a win, but Jalen stayed the course. He did transfer to Oklahoma, but he's made himself into a better quarterback. And I tell you, a couple of those throws, which I'm sure you've commented on in the Super Bowl, he did that as well as anybody in the league, frankly.
Yeah, he played his best game ever. All right, we're going to address Planet Gator, and I discussed this the other day. I believe Graham Hall and I cleared it up yesterday, but I don't know if Planet Gator was on. He wants to know about how many coaches a team can have. Okay, Graham cleared it up for yesterday. You can have 10 official coaches.
Mm-hmm.
Those coaches will be listed in your program, be listed on the website as O-line coach, DB coach, linebacker coach, but you can only have 10. Those are the only 10 that can go out and recruit. Now, your analysts can actually coach on the field now, where in the past they weren't supposed to, but they did, let's be honest. But they are allowed now to coach, but they will not be listed as a coach.
Mm-hmm.
They're still going to be analysts of blah, 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 this analyst of this. They're going to have these silly titles, but they will not be one of the 10 coaches. So I hope I cleared that up. We did it yesterday with Graham Hall. He did a really good job explaining it.
And let me also add, people ask this from time to time, and I've actually asked around about this, is what do these analysts make? And if you've heard something different, let me know. But basically what I understand is they make about an average of 50 to 60 a year as an analyst, which obviously if you're in transition, you get a little bit of money, you're able to learn from another staff. So in a lot of schools, we've got a lot of analysts, and that my understanding is that on average, Shane, that's basically what they make a year.
Yeah, that sounds about right, because you're going to have some young ones that are probably making $30,000, and you'll have some older ones that make $80,000 or $90,000, and it all sets. But the analyst job became about for guys that got fired, that wanted to stay in the business. They're collecting a big check from their previous employer, but they can still go somewhere and not have a coaching title, be on staff, stay around football, keep your name in the hat around the country, and still make a little bit of money. So, but yeah, you only can have 10 official coaches, but there's 85 so-called coaches in the picture now in your team photo. All of them can coach at practice now. So, Brent, talk about a couple of SEC teams that could go backwards this year.
Yeah, I give Saturday Down South credit for this. That they had 4 teams that may go in the opposite direction. One was Vanderbilt. I think we've all appreciated what Clark Lee has done. Now, the point here is, and this is interesting, 6 of the Vanderbilt 7 wins last year were by 10 points or less. So could they go backwards and lose about half of those? That would make a real difference. Ole Miss is also on this list. 9-win seasons at least in consecutive years for the first time. Obviously, Jackson Dart is off to the NFL. They are losing Princely U, Walter Nolan, Jared Ivey, and J.J. Pease on the defensive line. But I still think they brought in enough guys where that they will be okay, and Austin Simmons will be their quarterback. In Missouri, in South Carolina, also listed as a couple here. Now, South Carolina does return, as our producer Zach knows, Lenoris Sellers at quarterback. He certainly will be heralded quarterback, and edge rusher Dylan Stewart, one of the best in the SEC. So it's the time. Now, look, that probably means nothing to any of those teams, but it's a time of year when things like that come out.
Yeah. I want to give a shout out to Tommy in Savannah, Georgia. He sent me on the Titanamar text line Taylor Shoemaker's stats via, I think, FloridaGators.com. It looks like he did it off his phone. So as JC and I were complaining about not being able to find stats yesterday for the softball team, it's probably us 2 morons that didn't know how to work the website. Because Taylor Shoemaker did not hit a home run last night, but she's still off to a phenomenal start for a true freshman. All right, Brent, let's go around the SEC a little bit. What's going on in Tuscaloosa?
Yeah, James Madison is expected to hire Colin Hitchler as his next defensive coordinator. He was on the Alabama staff, so he gets a chance to go kind of from being the co-defense coordinator last year to being the guy, and that makes a difference. Devonta Smith, who caught a touchdown in the Super Bowl, obviously came from Alabama. He continues to play really well too. Ryan Grubb was hired as the Alabama offensive coordinator. I know we talked about that last week, but some people have asked about what about last year's coordinator, Nick Sheridan. Well, he was saying on the team and on the staff, I'm not sure what role that will be. He may go back to tight ends, wide receivers, or whatever they do with that, but he is not leaving the staff at this point. He will be back.
Yeah, speaking of Devontae Smith, the stat that's amazing to me, which is a great trivia question, that Devontae Smith became the first player from Alabama to ever score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. That's amazing to me.
It is, really.
Yeah, because they've had a lot of people play over the years. I guess Bart Starr never scored a touchdown. He probably threw a couple of touchdowns.
Yeah, that's true. And listen, this is just a real quick aside here. If you're a wide receiver on any level, if you want to study how really good wide receivers do it, this is a guy. He has mastered the art of catching the ball with his hands, and he is as good with that as anybody I've ever seen. So just for guys, if you're listening and you want to play wide receiver somewhere, look at some film of Devontae Smith, and there's a lot we could learn.
Yeah, the Pouncey twins, Mike and Marquise, invite you to try their mango martinis at Spurrier's Gridiron Grill, handcrafted with their J.F. Hayden liqueurs. Try those flavors and find your favorite at shopjfhayden.com. Brent, what's going on in Arkansas?
This is quite unusual, but this tells you what teams are up against in this day and age. This is depleting your class. The Arkansas recruiting class of 2023, only 5 players are on the roster. Then the 22 class, that should be redshirt juniors and seniors, there are only 2 players remaining from that class. I mean, Shane, that's the new world we're in, is it not? I mean, you go to all this work to bring in this recruiting class, and then being able to roster retention is the biggest one, certainly one of the biggest challenges for coaches right now.
Yes, it's an extremely difficult time to be coaching college athletics. The Auburn Tigers are an intriguing program to me, Brent, this year. I'm not sure. Is this Hugh Freeze's 3rd year or 4th? I can't remember how many years, but I think it's a huge year for Auburn, right? They brought in a really good signing class. I think it was rated higher than the Gators. They got their quarterback from Oklahoma. They've spent some money in the portal, and they gave DJ Durkin a pretty good pay raise.
Sure did. DJ Durkin, the name is very familiar. It's been all around the SEC. He is the D coordinator now at Auburn. He has agreed to a contract extension. Now, he will make 2.5. Now, there aren't many coordinators making 2.5. Now, Jim Knowles, who just went from Ohio State to Penn State, is making $3 million as a coordinator. But Durkin now one of the highest paid of them all. With the guys that you mentioned that Auburn got, they also got Eric Singleton, who is from Georgia Tech. Really good wide receiver. And Shane, they've got some really good wide receivers. Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson. Those guys will be, and they're still underclassmen, but they still will be very good. So, but to your point, very, very important year for Hugh Freeze, and they start off by playing at Baylor this year.
Gotcha. All right, the Gators lost an assistant coach or analyst to the National Football League, possibly could lose some more from what I'm hearing. Tell us what's going on in Gainesville.
Yeah, Baya Rasul, and I may be butchering that name, so forgive me, expected or is going to the Raiders. Look, you have a chance to coach on that level. I get it with that. So his name has been mention into Shane's point, they're the Super Bowl just now over. You would think all this has been done, but as you know, Shane, it really does take a while. You've got new coaches coming in. I mean, Jacksonville's got a new one. They're still getting staff together, so the transition with staff are going to be going on for quite several weeks over the next month or so.
Yeah, yes, for sure. All right, and Athens been kind of quiet so far this off season for the Georgia Bulldogs.
That'd be the greatest thing in the world Georgia could experience, would be a quiet off season, especially with players and cars. Wide receiver Zachariah Branch comes from Southern Cal. He was a sophomore there last year. They're expecting a lot out of him. He's a good receiver, predominantly in the short passing game. So, look, the thing with Georgia is they've just got to find some receivers, right, Shane, who can catch the ball. They led the Division I football last year in drop passes, and I would expect that would be a real important situation to deal with in spring practice.
Yeah. LSU, boy, I tell you what, people are on Brian Kelly. It seems like every time I look on Twitter, I know they brought in a lot of good players, but this is a huge year for the LSU Tigers, in my opinion.
Oh, it is. There's no doubt about that. And people haven't heard, they start the season at Clemson. So that won't be easy at all. But as you know, they not shy about playing some of the better teams to open the season. And look, the problem with that is they've lost 5 in a row, 5 openers in a row. So they've got to break that. To Shane's point, they picked up Nick Anderson, wide receiver at Oklahoma. He was injured most of last year, but when he's healthy, he's very good. Also, Patrick Payton, who was at Florida State, is now at LSU. The guy here that may be the biggest difference maker is Barian Brown, who I thought was incredible. You probably remember well at Kentucky. Yep. Not only is he a good wide receiver, but they use him in the kicking game. He's a good returner, has several kickoff returns for touchdowns. And another guy, Jakeem Jackson, who's a quarterback, that's come in too. So, Shane, the reality is, as we like to say, LSU always has dudes. They will this year, but what are they going to do with them?
Yeah, they also got Jakeem Jackson from Florida, who I always liked him as a defensive back. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, their roster is going to look good for sure. The Missouri Tigers are coming off, 2 or 3 pretty good years under Eli Drinkwitz, but they're finally their quarterback, who I feel like he's been playing for 10 years. He's gone. They brought in, I think, the backup quarterback from Penn State. Is he penciled to be their starter?
Yeah. That's what that's what it looks to be. The guys you're talking about, Luther Burden and Theo Weiss, 2 of the better wide receivers in the league, have gone to the NFL. Bo Pribula is who Shane is talking about, the quarterback from Penn State. So, I mean, they've got a good roster, and they could really play well. I mean, they could get, again, around double-digit wins. Eli Drinkwitz deserves some credit for what he's done with that program. And by the way, Shane, real quick, Mississippi State has picked up Luke Kromenhawk, if that name sounds familiar, and I may be mispronouncing a little bit. He was with FSU too. So comes from Tallahassee. So what we will see how he's going to do. But yes, but both those teams, particularly Mississippi State, needing to have a much better year than Jeff Lebby had his first year.
Yeah, and the Ole Miss Rebels did what they do every year in the off season, is portal. They signed a few really good players out of high school, but as you mentioned earlier, some people think they may go the other way this year. I don't see that happening.
I don't either. I think they're just too established right now. and if they can kind of get over the hump, that toward the middle of the end of the season, they will be to Princewell U, who is Princely U's brother, is on the team, and they're excited about him. Now, Shane, as you know, they can do wonders in the passing game, and they've got a Luke Hotz, H-A-S-Z. Looks like a guy who's really going to be able to help them at that point. So that's gonna be fun to see how they do. But I'm with you. I think they will be back, and I think they will be challenging again.
Yeah, for sure. Oklahoma's going to be an intriguing team to me because I really like their quarterback that they got from Washington State. Obviously, the Washington State offensive coordinator will be calling the plays. What do you see going on up in Boomer Sooner land?
And they've got to get better, don't they?
Yeah, they can't get any worse offensively.
No, they really can't. They really had a rough year last year. And the guy Shane's talked about is John Mateer from Washington State. Last year, 3,000 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. That's a pretty good touchdown to interception ratio, isn't it, Shane? 65% completion. They've also got Marvin Jones Jr. Yes, he also came from Florida State. We mentioned Florida State players several times. So, yeah, there's no doubt about that. A very, very important year for the Sooners.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Texas Longhorns. Obviously, they've had 2 really good back-to-back years under Steve Sarkisian. Had another phenomenal recruiting class. Any news coming out of Texas?
Probably the newsiest thing recently is they added to their quarterback room guy from Austin. He didn't have to go far, did he? He has committed to play. Was a 2-year starter at McCallum. The District 5A 12 first-team quarterback. Now, look, Arch Manning's going to be the quarterback there, but you've got to have guys in the quarterback room, and this is one who is, and Luke Dunham. So it will, all the Arch Manning hype will certainly continue and probably ratchet up several places too.
Yeah, I didn't realize that A&M had gotten this wide receiver in the portal from NC State, who's a really good player.
Really is. Casey Concepcion is his name. Last year he had 53 receptions for 460 yards. He wanted to kind of start again. He visited Miami and Alabama and Colorado. And then obviously they got Marcel Reed coming back. So Concepcion may be a guy that really helps them. And they are just a team, we say this every year, but I mean, they are just kind of stuck. And even Mike Elko's year last year, Shane, they just can't get past that 8-4, can they? That they've just been a 7-5, 8-4 football team for the last several years. And that's one thing that they've got to get past, and maybe this guy will help them do that.
Yeah, for sure. Mark's question on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing. Is Arch Manning making as much as Carson Beck at Miami? I don't really know. I don't know if you can ever trust any of the things you hear,
right.
But I have a hard time believing Carson Beck's going to make more than Arch Manning because, Arch Manning, the name and the school and the alumni base, that place has a lot of money.
It does.
Austin, Texas. Don't really know. Brent, we got a text on the Titan Mark text line from Jimmy. He wants to know, Brent, what SEC coaches, in your opinion, are on the so-called hot seat?
Well, I think Sam Pittman is still in the hot seat. Now he saved his job. And look, in many ways, he's a natural fit for Arkansas. Just being from that area, he understands the line of scrimmage real well. And obviously Bobby Petrino coming in helped him a lot. Frankly, Taylon Green is a good quarterback they've got. He'll be back. So, but I'm sure he will be probably first on the list. Shane mentioned this a few minutes ago. Hugh Freeze is going to be on the list. I mean, the reality is, if they're another 6-6 or 7-5, I don't know if they'll fire him then, but that seat will be extremely hot during that time. But those are the two that probably come to mind quicker than any of the others.
Yeah, Mark says, is Brian Kelly's seat getting warm? Probably so.
Yeah. The thing that hurts Kelly as much as anything else is either it's kind of the off the field stuff that happens with them. They need a big year. There's no doubt about that. They brought him in from Notre Dame to win championships, and that is not happening at this point. So Shane and I both like Nussmeier at quarterback. He'll be fine. The thing for them is, and we'll get into this over the next few weeks, is they've got to continue to improve their defense. They've got the coaches in order to do it. They're bringing in guys. So really, Shane, at this point for Brian Kelly, there are no excuses, are there?
None whatsoever. Give us a few nuggets before we get you out of here, Brent.
Yep. We'll be glad to do that too. Florida State in their recruiting, they picked up Deuce Robinson, wide receiver, James Williams, a edge rusher, Luke Pettibon, who's an offensive lineman. Remember, they got the transfer Thomas Castellius that hopefully they think will be good at quarterback. Remember, again, they start the season with Alabama coming in their refurbished stadium too. And Shane, I know that I'm going to mention this real quick. I know this is not football, but the most excitement that we've seen in quite a while, the off season in the state of Alabama, is happening Saturday afternoon at 4:00 when Auburn comes in to play Alabama in basketball, and they're both either 1-2 or just the reverse. So it's frankly an amazing thing to see in the state of Alabama as far as how both those programs have really come along in basketball. And Shane, I won't hesitate to say at all, if Florida can ever get healthy, they especially we saw this after the Auburn game, Florida is good enough to be in the Final Four and even win a national championship, I believe.
I agree 100%. And Kanye Ronk's question on YouTube, brought to you by Clive Farmer, who will be FSU's quarterback if their freshman QB departed? They went in the portal and got, is it Thomas Castellanos from Boston College, who used to be at UCF, like a 5'10", 5'11" guy that runs around. So,
right.
Brent, good stuff as always. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week, bud.
Thanks, Shane. Always enjoy it, bud. Take care.
That's Brent Beaird, our college football analyst and Heisman Trophy voter. Join us on the Titan MR Hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp. Take a quick time out. When we come back, we'll talk with Mike Morgan from the SEC Network about this unbelievable SEC basketball group. The conference is incredible. You're watching and listening to PodUp with Matthews in the Morning from the International Diamond Center Studios. We'll be right back.
Our premium sponsors are Campus USA Credit Union,
International Diamond Center,
Meldon Law, QC Kinetics, Dave & Buster's, UF Health Orthopedics and Sports Medicine Institute, JF Hayden Craft Liqueurs, Florida Cracker Kitchen, Los Linderos Tequila. Gridiron sponsors are Baker Sporting Goods, Cogent Bank, Comfort Temp, Electronics World, Florida Victorious, Gallo Car Wash, Miapa Latin Cafe, Peachland Dental, Quality Plumbing, Ruse Ogre State Farm, Silverback Concrete, 84 Lumber, Big Mills Cheesesteak, Celebrate Primary Care, Dowling Sign, Gator Bait Media, Gator Dominoes, Ironwood Golf Course, Okido America, Tropical Smoothie Cafe, UF Bookstores, Nest and Wow, MG&A Wealth Management. Watch and listen to us live on Facebook and YouTube. Listen to the podcast whenever on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Remember to like, follow, and subscribe so you don't miss an episode. To become a sponsor, call my man Freddie at 352-284-3733.
Unleash the Inferno.
I'm tired of you living in pain, and I want you to get real lasting relief from chronic pain in your knees, back, shoulders, and hips. QC Kinetics can get you moving again with cutting-edge regenerative treatments with no drugs, no downtime, and no surgery. Stop putting it off. Call now and schedule your free consultation. Call QC Kinetics now in Gainesville, Ocala, and the Villages. 352-400-4550. 352-400-4550.
Welcome back to the International Diamond Center studios. There are many car washes in Gainesville, but only one Gallo Car Wash, locally owned by UF alum and the only car wash that provides NIL opportunities to Gator athletes. With locations on Northwest 13th Street, Southwest Wilson Road, coming soon to Jonesville. We're waiting on Mike Morgan. In the meantime, as we mentioned, softball with another run rule win. They play today against the Boston College Eagles. I think it's 6 o'clock. But just rolling right along. And Gator basketball this weekend and against South Carolina. And again, baseball, first pitch of the season against the Air Force Falcons, Friday, February 14th. While we're waiting on Mike, let's get to This Day in Sports, brought to you by Campus USA Credit Union. Put some star power to work in your financial life, Campus USA Credit Union. In 1937, the Boston Redskins received approval from the NFL to move to Washington, D.C. to share baseball's Griffith Stadium with the Washington Senators of the American League. So I'm still waiting on the damn Redskins to get their name back, because I'm Native American and I don't give a crap if they use the name or not. And I don't think many Native Americans really care about it. That's just my personal opinion. Let's go to the Titan MR hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp. And we have the SEC Network, Mike Morgan. Good morning, Mike. How you doing, bud?
Shane, PodUp Nation, good morning to one and all. Hope you're doing well. I'm driving in 9-degree temperature here in lovely Missouri. I'm sure it's much warmer in Gville.
You're driving?
Well, I'm driving to the airport. So the way this goes, for those of us who don't have the luxury of charter flights, you know, I'm not all about that life. When you're an ESPN announcer, you go commercial, baby. So you fly Atlanta to St. Louis, and then you drive 2 hours, usually through ice and snow, to get to lovely Como.
Yeah, it's that I've only been to Missouri one time as the color analyst, and I don't know if they were actually doing construction in Columbia, Missouri's airport, or they just pulled that crap and said we had to land in St. Louis, and then the whole team had to bus, and it was a miserable trip. I'll just say that. All right.
It's a depressing drive on I-70.
Yeah. Before we jump into it here, Mark's got a question for you on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing. He says, does Mike think that the foul where Condon got hurt was flagrant, or just an ordinary foul, or did you even see it?
I saw it. I think you have to call flagrant there. I don't think that's a basketball play. Now, you start getting into a dangerous area. Any lawyer will tell you this. If you start talking about intent, Melendez doesn't have a rep as a dirty player, and I don't know if in his mind he was trying to do something dirty. I wouldn't say that. But what I would say is you take intent out of it, and reaching from behind and just kind of pulling at a guy, it's a dangerous play. It's not a basketball play. So I wouldn't have called it a flagrant 2 and booted him from the game. But I would have definitely called a flagrant 1 on the play.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about the Gators. Obviously, we're down 1 the other night in Starkville, and just came back and just blasted the Bulldogs without 2 starters. Man, they're playing good basketball right now.
There's so much to like about this team, Shane. You know, I always talk about teams that can go far in March, because that's what we're looking at now. Let's face it. You want to obviously finish up strong. Gators have a very good chance at a number 1 seed, but you also want to make sure that you are built for a long run in March. I think last year, while everybody was jumping on the Gator bandwagon, one of the things that was glaring was they were not a great defensive team, and that showed up, and you give up over 100 points and you lose in round 1. I think March is a lot. It's like going up against Bill Belichick in football during the heyday of the Patriots. Bill Belichick would take away your strength. And that's what teams do in March. If you are a one-trick pony, or if you only rely on threes, or if you just rely on one shooter to kind of bail you out, a great defensive team will take that away. And so to me, it's less about who's got the most strengths, but sometimes who's got the fewest weaknesses when you're kind of separating the teams. And I don't see a weakness on Florida. I just don't see it. And I'll add this, because I don't think this has been brought up by any of the people calling the games that know any history of Florida basketball. 06-07, this goes back to my radio days. I called a number of those games that had those back-to-back national championship teams under Billy. People would not remember, in many cases, particularly non-Florida fans, those were not chock full of McDonald's All-Americans. I believe Brewer was the one McDonald's All-American. The other players, Al Horford was a guy that was they weren't there. A lot of scouts were lukewarm on. Joakim Noah, people thought was a bit of a project. We all know Lee Humphrey is now the radio analyst, was not a huge recruit. Torian Green was not a huge recruit. But they were all really good college basketball players that played very well together. Why do I mention that? Because if you look at this Gator team, Walter Clayton was with Iona, and if Rick Pitino doesn't leave to take another job, as he always does, then maybe he stays with Rick for another year at Iona and continues to dominate a much smaller conference. But he was predominantly a big-time football recruit who wanted to play basketball. And you look at Hauk, he wasn't a big recruit. Condon was going to go to St. Mary's. That was his only other offer, and they kind of stumbled upon him on accident during an international tournament in Las Vegas. My point is that this team is a collection of guys that are not blue-chip recruits but play elite basketball, and I think that makes them even more fun to root for.
I would agree with everything you just stated. I want to ask you, can you imagine if the season were to end today, if Alabama, Auburn, and Florida were all one seeds, all hell would break loose around the country. I mean, it could happen.
Oh, it absolutely could happen. And I think I would add Duke to that list as 4 teams that are playing the best basketball in the country. I mean, there's other teams that could certainly be in the conversation, but I wouldn't put anybody over those 4. So there's a very good chance the SEC is going to get 3 of them. And, oh, by the way, nobody wants to play Tennessee, A&M, Missouri, right? I mean, there's just so many good teams from this league that you don't want to see in your bracket. So it's a historical season for many different reasons on the SEC front.
Andy asked on Facebook Live, brought to you by Metal Law, Mike, do you think the Gators should sign Todd Golden to a long-term deal before the Blue Bloods start calling?
Yeah, I do.
But I thought he got a new deal last year. I thought Chris Harry told us that. Maybe I'm.
Well, he probably did, but you know how that works, Shane. I mean, these deals now, one of the most important numbers is not the years and the salary, but it's the buyout. And quite frankly, if a job like North Carolina comes open, Indiana is open, you got blue bloods with a lot of money to spend. Now, recent history has told us guys just don't flock to the blue bloods anymore. If that was the case, Nate Oates would have been hired 3 times already, but he's still at Alabama with a dilapidated arena. So SEC schools have just as much money as everybody else, and the SEC has proven this is now a basketball league. So I don't think the old school would have been, well, you got to leave for a better job for a blue blood in the ACC or the Big Ten. I don't think that's the case anymore. And Florida's got enough money. They're not going to lose a bidding war for Todd Golden. So it all depends on how you look at it. It all depends on how happy Todd and his family are in Gainesville. But I certainly think there's going to be programs that are going to make a few phone calls his way. But something tells me, I think coaches are loyal to an extent. they're always going to go if there's a much better financial package to another job. But you never forget the major program that believed in you. Not many people knew who the heck Todd Golden was when Florida hired him. Bruce Pearl is the biggest reason why he's in Gainesville. And I think Todd Golden recognizes, hey, Florida gave me a shot when not many other programs were out there offering me a job like that. Same reason why Nate Oates, who left Buffalo to go to Alabama, stayed there. Same reason why I believe Bruce Pearl is going to stay at Auburn, even though a lot of people are convinced he's going to leave. So take that for what it's worth. You never know what is going on a certain coach's head and what his priority list is, but I'd like to think that he feels a sense that Florida was awfully good to him, and he'll be awfully good to Florida.
Nick on the Titan MR text line asked, which SEC teams do you think will be the first out when the tournament is picked? How many teams are you going to think are going to make it? Like today, how many teams do you think make it, Mike?
I'm going to set it at a dozen. I know a lot of people were talking 13. I just think there's a couple of teams that I see that are starting to run out of gas, Shane. And this league is so relentless this year that you could be a good team, not great, but good, and then all of a sudden you hit a tailspin and you hit that late February wall, and the conference record's just not good enough. Like 8 will get you in, 7 will have you on the bubble, but 6 is not enough. And so I think there'll be some teams that are right around 6 that are going to be NIT bound. So I'll go with a dozen. And obviously, I mean, if you just wanted to go chalk, the teams that are most vulnerable will be the teams with the lowest seed. The teams that barely get in on the bubble that would probably be the most likely to get bounced early. But I don't know, again, even the 12th team in, I could see winning a couple of games in March, Shane. I just think all of them have enough there where they could do a little damage.
When you look at the league now, would you say Florida, Alabama, and Auburn have kind of separated themselves? I know Tennessee's kind of hovering there. You just never know how they're going to play. But don't you think those are the 3 premier teams in the league at this point?
100%. I think they're the premier teams. I think they're the most complete teams. I think they're playing the best basketball. I've been bitten by Tennessee too many times. They've broken my bracket too many times. Now, last year they didn't, but last year they had an elite scorer in Dalton Connect, who should have been a top 10 pick in the NBA and was a bucket getter when they needed it. Rick's teams always play great defense, and they've always got elite athletes, and they rebound well and they defend well. But very often they go into an offensive swoon, and I still think that's a possibility. They don't have a Dalton Connect this year, and they don't score the way Alabama and Auburn and Florida do. They're just not that type of offensive unit. So I'm not going to put Tennessee quite in that other class.
Florida Victorious, proud NIL partner of the Florida Gators, joined today to help make Florida victorious. Got Mike Morgan from the SEC Network on the Titan MR Hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp, for a few more minutes. We got a couple of questions here. Wolf Gator on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing, says, Chris Beaird or Billy Donovan gets the Indiana job? I don't know why Billy would want to go back to college.
That's out there. Look, Chris Beaird is going to be rumored for everything because people believe that Ole Miss, you can only go so far there. And, he was courted heavily by Arkansas last year and wound up turning it down. But some people just believe that Ole Miss is one of the most difficult jobs in the SEC. And so therefore you're going to hear Chris Beaird rumors all over the place. Again, Ole Miss, not only does Ole Miss pay him well, they have one of the highest, as I understand it, NIL budgets. That was baked into the contract. So they're spending money, and they'll continue to spend money on recruits and in the portal. So I'd like to think that would keep him happy, but you never know. The Billy Donovan one is very interesting. They're kind of spinning their wheels there in Chicago. I don't know how much longer that lasts. And Billy obviously has done enough in the sport and probably has enough money where he never has to coach again. But if he does coach again, I wonder, in this day and age where you don't have to recruit the way Billy had to be a relentless recruiter at Florida and outwork everybody, now if he gets a blue blood job that spends a ton of money, then all of a sudden Billy would have one of the most talented teams and rosters year in and year out in college basketball, which would be scary for everybody that has to go against him. So I think it's very interesting, the Billy Donovan rumors out there, and I certainly wouldn't rule it out. It all depends on how much hunger Billy still has and how much zest he has for the college game.
If I'm Billy, there's only one college job I take, and that would be North Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah, and man, Billy would have – North Carolina would be scary good again. They really would. I mean, I love Hubert Davis, and I realize he made it to a Final Four. I don't know how much longer Tar Heel Nation is going to look at that and say, yeah, this is where we want to be. And they're going to go big game hunting. And Billy Donovan is definitely big game hunting, because what he did at Florida was one of the best coaching jobs in the history of the sport.
I agree. Tighten our text line. Frank asks, how does Mike get assigned which games he'll cover? Is it certain teams or regions or times? Wondering how that works.
It is completely random. So, I mean, I was on a heater of Florida games early, right? I had like 5 of them in a 2 or 3 week span, but I don't think I'll have them the rest of the year. They try to divvy it up rather equally. You know, they try to not have the same announcing crew on the same team a bunch of times. So I've seen everybody in the league at least once this year, which is, I think, the same for most of us that do this. And then from there, it's just kind of, it's random. And I've done several ESPN2 games in the past. This year, it's been more SEC Network. Honestly, all we ever root for, and let's be honest, we had a stinker last night. It wasn't competitive. Missouri was just too good for Oklahoma. Whether it's me and Mark or me and Pat Bradley or me and whoever, we just want a competitive game. And I had a streak there of about 5 in a row where they were great games, and every team is good in the league this year. And then the one last night, it's break out the filler material, Shane. I was going to start, talking about your career and how you were just a young boy from Pascagoula and turned out to be the number 1 starter and broke all kinds of I could have just thrown that out there, and people say, why is he talking Shane Matthews on a Missouri-Oklahoma basketball game? And the answer would have been because I can. That's why.
Yeah. Tony says on Facebook Live, brought to you by Mel Law, is the best ref in the SEC named Steve Anderson?
I know Steve.
I don't even know these guys. So,
well, Steve is from Orlando, so I get the feeling that might be somebody who knows Steve. I actually sat next to Steven on a plane this year, going somewhere to do an SEC game. Really good guy, and yes, he's one of the good ones out there. I think we have really good crews. I know fans. Look, fans are going to hate the officials no matter what. And every league likes to think they have the worst. Like SEC football fans are convinced SEC football officials are the worst in the country. Watch a Big 12 game. Watch an ACC game. I promise you, SEC is not worst. And Mike Eads does a great job as kind of the head of officiating in that league. You know, the best in the business, I always go to the guys that have been there the longest. I like the Don Dailies of the world. I like the oh gosh, I just forgot his name. Oh, they're going to kill me. Joe Lindsay. And then there's a couple others that have been to several Final Fours and have been around along. It's kind of like broadcasting. You know, I'll take the guy who's been there, done that, experience, perspective, as opposed to the young guy still kind of working his way up. And we've got some good veterans in the league.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Mike, before we get you out of here, outside of Duke and the SEC teams, what teams you think can make a deep run or have opportunities to be a 1 or 2 seed nationally?
Well, Iowa State's certainly been up there for a while out of the Big 12. The Big 12 is still a good league. It's not as good as it normally is. You know, the Big 10 certainly has some teams that can do some damage. I'll give you. I don't know if I'd call them a sleeper. They're ranked, but the job that Coach Kelsey has done at Louisville. Not enough people are talking about Louisville as a team that is very quietly, because the ACC is having a down year, but they're a good team and doing good things over there. So that would be a another one in my eyes. But, if you start trying to project the bracket now, it's kind of an exercise in futility. It's just so hard to do, and then it becomes so random with all the upsets and everything else. I think the biggest thing that I'm going to be curious about, like the SEC has done a world of good in PR, helping its reputation as a league, 8 bids last year, and like I said, I expect about a dozen this year. But now you got to do damage in the tournament. Alabama got to the Final Four, and Tennessee got to the Elite Eight last year. I mean, that was good. But there's other programs that need to hold their weight too. So you can't have, for example, a Florida getting bounced in the first round. You can't have, let's just say, a Texas A&M getting an early exit. You need a lot of teams in the Sweet 16. I want to see a handful of teams at least make it to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament, and that's when that respect will continue to go to another level. It's one thing to do it in the regular season. Now you need to do it in March as well.
Yep. All right. We got a quick question here from Franklin on YouTube, brought to you by Quality Plumbing. Who will replace Leonard Hamilton at FSU? I've heard Dennis Gates' name, but would you leave Missouri for FSU?
Yeah, it's funny. I just had a conversation with Dennis Gates about that last night, and I know, as a longtime assistant under Leonard, they know each other very well. He has great memories of being in Tallahassee. If you take Dennis at his word, he doesn't want to leave Missouri. Missouri gave him his big shot. Missouri's never been to a Final Four. They've never won the SEC. And he wants to make history at Mizzou. They treat him well. They pay him well. Great fan support. I don't think Florida State's a more attractive job than Missouri at this point. So I'm not sure where Florida State turns to at that point. Maybe they go big game hunting. I just don't know if that's a big game hunting job, to be honest with you. I mean, what is Florida State, with all due respect to Leonard Hamilton, Leonard won a lot of games, but they didn't do really well in March. They haven't been a team that's made a lot of great tournament runs in Tallahassee. So I don't know how many people that already have a good job are going to say, yeah, I want to take the Florida State job. They might have to do the Florida route. Find a mid-major guy that's a young up-and-comer and roll the dice with him and hope that you strike gold.
Yeah, very true. What you got? What games you got coming up this week?
I'm following Missouri now. Yeah, I'm following Missouri to Athens. So my first game at Stegman this year. Georgia and Mike White really needs this game. They are right now on the cut line. They're on the right side of the bubble. But if you lose this game at home, that can quickly change. If you win it, it's a quad one win that would really go a long way for Georgia's case. So that'll be on the docket on Saturday afternoon. And then I go to Baton Rouge for the first time in a while for an LSU team that's really reeling right now under Coach McMahon. That they in South Carolina have had a number of issues. They've been close in a lot of games, but they've really struggled to close them.
Yep. Mike, appreciate your time. Travel safely, and we'll talk to you next week, my friend.
Always a pleasure, Shane. We'll do it up next week. Thank you.
Yep, that's Mike Morgan from the SEC Network. Join us on the Titan More Hotline, courtesy of Comfort Temp. Ruse Ogre State Farm offers a team of dedicated insurance professionals ready to help life go right with the right insurance options for you and your family. Visitogreinsurance.com. Give them a call, 352-240-1779. Want to thank Brent and Mike for joining the program. Appreciate y'all chiming in. We'll be here tomorrow, folks. Have a great day. Take care.